good start. We went from, I got back to Lady, and I think that's what got her all.
I think I got it right. See very well at the top.
I'm not tall enough.
I don't know how to.
It says REC.
Aggravations and frustrations.
No, but I'm gonna look at them when I need to.
What's that?
Did you change your password?
What's that?
Yes.
Policy change. Well, we're in hand. Moving in the right direction. Baby steps. I got long legs. They stop taking those baby steps. Stop taking, no, never. When I was a baby, I was taking big steps.
Shocking.
I know.
Is everybody ready?
No. Can we just have a second?
You can have all the time you want. Everybody knows you're actually in charge here. We are just, no. That's enough.
We're all just puppets.
That's, no, in Gene's world.
That's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said my world.
Oh, no.
Gene is definitely
You're
in
not in
charge.
charge.
I'm not even in charge of me, my son said anything else. Just ask my wife. My boo. 32 years.
How many?
32.
We put that podium over there so she does.
Gene, G-E-N-E, just like the first name Gene, and Georgette. Gene and Georgette, it's one of the finest restaurants.
Where is it?
It's on Franklin Street, right under the, the open one road, right under the river. No, river and,
Open, somewhere cold.
no, Higgins. River, it's on Higgins, just west of River Road.
Okay.
Right across the Miami.
Right, yeah, I got you.
They opened one there too, it is
Start just
absolutely. Oh, no, it's a brand new building, they remodeled, it's beautiful. Yeah, they go upstairs.
Oh, for my name, for the.
It's a house, it's on top of a house. Downstairs is pretty small. Broke away, so-
It's got a vision.
Winter is a silent.
No, the other place we're talking about, next to the casino.
Hugo Frog,
Yes.
that's really good too. Same thing as well. Pocono Chow, oh, that's right, that's in the, that's right.
But you said the other one, the other one's much better. You have to start writing all these places down now and go. Just to sell them. Friday. I'll be on the deck at 4:30. Thinking of. We're looking at the 10th, the 18th. Hey, if the lights on. Oh, yeah, yeah. If you're busy doing something, and she wants to, more than Barry for us. I mean, we'll just throw her in the other room. We have one place.
Okay, it's on. All right, meeting is now in session. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Glad to see you all this evening. So the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and I believe we have a change or two for voting on the bills.
Oh,
Liz?
sorry, I was,
Okay.
John, I would like, check number 330051 for $3,966 even, voted separately. And I would like check number 330148 for $7,514.87 voted separately.
Okay. And which one is,
Which one is one is for the attorneys and one is for Jenna. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name.
Charbonneau?
What?
Charbonneau.
Sharp.
Which one is for her?
The 3,30051. And the second one, 330148, is for Hodges and Louisi.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then somebody will calculate a new number for us, right? Okay.
Well, no, we don't know that the one's going to be approved. Well, we know they're both going to be approved.
We're guessing. Okay, then, there's no other changes, then I move we approve the agenda as amended.
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. Roll call.
Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Mr. Munda.
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I have 7 yes, motion carries.
Very good. The next item on the agenda is the reception of visitors. So this is the portion of the meeting where anyone would like to address the board for their 3 minutes of fame. We would love to entertain you, so we had no one sign in to address the board, so no one is going to address us. Then we'll move on to the president's report. So
John, could I make a comment?
you may.
I appreciate that you allow people who have not signed in to the opportunity to speak. And I just wanted to point that out because of the problems apparently that are going on in some other areas of other governing bodies.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, and then I have nothing else to really report in the president's report, but we do have some committee reports. So the first one being the curriculum committee.
The curriculum committee met a couple weeks ago, and we looked through the handbook, the academic portion of the handbook. It was chapters 8, 9, and 10. So I think we have the minutes in the packet.
We do. Would you care to elaborate in any way? I'm not saying you need to, I'm just asking.
We just, basically, in the chapter 8 is updating all of the testing information and new dates or something like that. Chapter 9 deals with special ed. We have a new special ed description. And chapter 10 deals with just our Bridges transition program. We made some changes there, and the GED information.
Very good. Thank you, as always. The next one is the Architectural Services Review Committee.
The Architectural Services Review Committee was held on April 1st, 2016 at 8:30 in the morning. The purpose of the meeting was to review the 5 firms selected to interview, determine a list of finalists in accordance with Public Act 85-854, and for selection of district architectural firms. The 5 firms presented information on their qualifications based on the criteria set by the district. The committee selected finalists and ranked them for the next step, which are contract negotiations. The negotiated contract will be presented to the board when completed. The meeting adjourned at 2:56 p.m.
So have the people who've been selected for the final grouping been advised of this?
Yes.
So are you gonna tell us, or are we not be holding that back for future time? I'm just curious. It doesn't-
The top candidate was DLA. The second candidate was Rough Pate. The third would have been Darby and Larson.
Okay. So is there a timeline on that at this point?
I'm hoping to get negotiations, my thought was to get negotiations done for the next board meeting. I'm not sure that's realistic, but
Yeah.
I've already met with the top rated firm and have asked for pricing, but I think there's going to be a little bit more involved than, with that process. The attorney has the tentative contract for review, so that is in the legal phase right now for contract language. And then it will be fee negotiation,
Okay, so then,
most likely May.
yeah. And then we'll get that as the contract as part of the packet before the May meeting.
Right, and then you would approve
Have
it,
time to look at it, obviously.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, so if it's not ready enough in advance to get us to us before the meeting, then we have to postpone it to the next meeting.
That's right.
Correct.
That's
Okay,
right.
very good. Any questions on that? Okay. Discipline Student Handbook Committee.
Our committee met a week ago on April 5th and reviewed the chapters and the recommended substantive changes in the handbook. We will continue to look at the handbook all the way up until release time, obviously, because there's names that changes and dates that change. And so we continue to modify minor tweaks, but we did want to make sure that we brought to the board any substantive changes that are in the handbook. We actually have an action item later for those, but substantively, things that have changed are, obviously, we want to be inclusive of the 100-year logo information, the logo and information about the centennial next year. We'll update the table of contents. We want to make sure that all of our new strategic planning information is included in Chapter 1, as well as the board policies regarding district philosophy, goals, objectives, and civility. So we kind of cleaned up that chapter with overview information in the strategic plan. We'll update the calendar and bells for next year. Just minor changes in those, obviously, and we continue to tweak those. No changes in Chapter 3. We're trying to make sure that parents, we'll try to communicate this well too, that parents call in 2 hours beforehand if requesting their child be released from school at some point in time for a doctor's appointment, for example, so we're not rushing around last minute. We talked quite a bit about the order within the residency registration fees, fee waiver chapter. We've pulled out of the everywhere in the handbook, we're pulling out the actual fee amounts, so we don't lose them from year to year. We'll put those on a separate fee sheet, which we'll bring to the board in 2 weeks on the 26th for the board to approve those fees for next year. And then obviously we'll include all the fee information with the registration process for next year. We're not looking at any major changes to the fees for next year. We're just trying to pull them off all into a fee sheet and be inclusive and make sure they're correct. So that was our thinking there. Transportation and parking, one of the things we talked about was making sure that students know that their parking permits, if you will, are dependent upon their good behavior and good attendance to school. Clarification on some health issues. The academic promotion and graduation chapter, obviously we put in the final exam changes regarding who can be exempt next year for seniors for final exams, and updated the test information. We did a lot of work on the special services chapter 9 just to review that for clarity and that the philosophy statements were good. We dropped out some information regarding the GED in chapter 10. It really was information that they can get from the RO website, so we just directed them in that regard. In regards to attendance, we really tried to, it was one of our areas of focus in regards to both our school start time meeting and the strategic planning process. So we tried to put some of the consequences regarding truancy in that chapter. Under discipline and conduct, obviously we had some updated language because of Senate Bill 100 and tried to make sure that we clarified some of our processes there in regards to suspension and expulsion. And we did some updates with our infractions and the consequences related to suspensions specifically. No changes were recommended in Chapter 13. We're going to include a whole Chapter 14 in regards to our activities program. That's our formal activities program. We've done a lot of work with our athletic program over the years, but really haven't kind of created that parallel chapter or parallel part for our formal activities program. So for example, holding the students that are in our theater program to a parallel set of standards as we do students in our athletic program. Kim and Mark are in the process of developing that and just creating a parallel set of standards and expectations for our formal activity program. And we're trying to do a lot of work on that before release time. In the athletic program, we did a lot of work that we've done in trying to make sure that we up our game for our student athletes. Specifically, we've tried to make sure that students are in school all day rather than just the 5 periods, which is the IHSA mandate. So we had a lot of conversations with our committee and with our athletic department, our principals about how we can manage that. And with the exception of like a doctor's note, what we don't want our students coming periods 0 through 4, right? And then, being off periods 5, 6, and 7 just for break time and then coming back for practice. So with the exception of a doctor's note in there, we want students there all periods of the day. Or if you have an administrative approval, why not? And we've also put in there some tougher, more stringent language about getting support for students who aren't doing so well in the classroom. An example of that is if students are not, if they're, in terms of weekly eligibility, if they show up for 3 consecutive weeks or 4 cumulative weeks within a season, at that point in time, we wanted them to know that they're done. And we did that because obviously they haven't been, over time, right, they're not getting their grades up the way they should, and letting them go to practice after school doesn't seem real prudent. We're also mandating that for those students that show up for 4 or more times, 4 or more classes on the eligibility sheet, that we mandate, even if they are eligible for that week, that we start by trying to figure out how we can mandate they get some study table time and get some tutoring 1 day a week rather than going to practice, right? So we're trying to put some services in place, and Willie's been working hard with us, especially over at O'Plain, because our feeling is that for us to set a higher bar for what our expectations are, especially with our freshmen and sophomores, pay dividends down the road for when they obviously get over here and they're a little older in terms of what we really expect of them. So those increasing attendance and keeping a better track of them in terms of their grades were 2 points of emphasis as a whole related to that. And we're still having discussions about some data points and looking at some data from past years to try to draw on where we might go from there. But minimally, we know those were the things that we agreed on that we'd be able to implement next year for our athletic program. Am I forgetting anything?
I just want to point out, the common thread that runs throughout most of the handbook changes really deal with some of our strategic plan issues. Carol had pointed out when we had met going over, looking at possible change times about the amount of money with general state aid. I shot to Carol today the governor's proposal on general state aid, probably for the first time in a long time, fully funding general state aid. Those numbers are good for us. But by increasing student attendance, it not only allows us some additional funds, but students, when they're in class, learn. Students that are not in class don't learn. So Willie's got to be happy about that when we're talking about student growth. Teachers have to be happy about that when now we're looking at para and looking at the evaluation process of holding teachers accountable. So when we bring that back to athletics, We raised the bar for our athletes. We're looking at bringing that across the board to all extracurricular activities. It's a little bit more difficult because when you look at, for example, a play, and you don't have a season where there's games and competitions, you have one performance. How do you take your lead role out if something were to happen? You don't have someone to replace them. So it's a little bit tricky, but I think that between Kim and Mark and I think some of the other administrators, they'll find some ways to. We do hold our athletes to a higher standard on a number of different outside activities. We're concerned with academics, though. We're working on seeing how do we do that. I know Kim's really kind of got her hand or her finger on the pulse of pulling reports to see where some of those numbers are, and maybe looking at setting the standard for the academic pieces, which is something right now that the IHSA sets a standard, but I think that's a little low. Most of our students, correctly, take 6 classes, and you have to be passing 5. So that means you're getting 5 Ds in order to be eligible or participate in athletics, which I think that standard's a little bit low. I think we can find some ways to raise that bar over time. And I'm certainly not saying we just jump into anything without further investigation, but I think that we do have data points. We have an outstanding resource in our data collection where that information is at our fingertips. And I think if we use that data, I think we'll be able to come to something that we can put out there and have an expectation for our student athletes moving forward here in the future, which I think will be a good thing.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that explanation. I think it was very good.
Thank you. I think that pretty much covered things where we're at right now.
All right. Then we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
I think Mr. Anderson had a few things to just remind the board about, or at least give some advice on. First off, I wanted to thank our whole staff, but in particular our administrators and some of our, Mary and Jean primarily, and then a lot of our support staff that contributed to. We finished our compliance visits from the ROE a few weeks ago, both from a personnel perspective and from a documents perspective. And while we don't have the formal reports back, we feel really confident that we were very well prepared and very thorough, and they were quick in and out because of the great work that Mary and Jean did in setting up a process. So I want to say thanks to them and for the good work that they do on our compliance visits, which are very important. Also, as was mentioned earlier, just updates from Springfield. Things are moving a little bit down there right now, is the word on the street. And Senator Menard, we submitted a different plan in terms of funding for schools that would kind of delay implementation, that may get some legs. So there's a lot more talking going on regarding funding, and it seems like, at least to a degree for right now, they're starting to realize they have to move a little bit. We are excited that, at least tentatively right now, we had a proposal put to us from a few of our staff members to possibly experiment with getting a few youngsters through the Lake County Workforce Development Programming this summer. Not at a cost to us, but they try to hire some students who can use some work over the summers to work at a number of locations. Schools are a good spot for them because we usually have good summer work to do. That's pretty, pretty easy to find. And so technology and maintenance are usually areas we can find that. It's the first year I think we've done this, or at least as far as I know, at least in a while. So we're excited to see how that goes if everything comes out. We got an open invitation from the School Board Association reminding all districts that if there are any recommended resolutions for IASB to consider at this year's III, June 22nd is the deadline for those resolutions.
For the new resolutions?
Yeah, so those are right now in the superintendent's office, that form. So if you're interested in that, it's down in our office in June 22nd is the deadline on that piece. We did have 2 FOIA requests. To date, we have 62 items for the 15-16 school year, FOIAs that is. And we've had 2 since the last board meeting. One was from Klein, Thorpe and Jenkins, the legal firm regarding our bus route information and documentation about technology, hardware and software purposes. And we also got one from the Illinois Retired Teachers Association looking for names of retiring teachers or administrators for this year, so we'll respond to them accordingly. We also got a request from State Senator Bush's office this summer just to host a forum, if you will, on student loan fraud prevention and identity theft. They were just looking at using one of our facilities kind of in summertime, mid-July. They're thinking probably 20 people, so we'll work with them on making sure that's set up, and it's also in conjunction with the Illinois Attorney General's office. We will have next, in 2 weeks, we'll be back to having our treasurer's report and our normal monthly reports. We'll have those at our second meeting of the month, which is the 26th. And we also have a problem right now at our transition center. So I wanted to just let the board know that today they were experiencing again some significant plumbing and sewage problems, I believe, at our transition center. Kind of late in the day we got the call. We wanted to make sure for tomorrow everybody over there was safe, so we talked to the administrative team and the teachers. And it's pretty easy for us to contact those families and tell them for tomorrow, because we're not sure what shape it's going to be, just to stay home tomorrow. We'll communicate tomorrow what the status of that facility is. If it goes beyond tomorrow, if it looks like that, we'll look at relocating to probably one of our other campuses after that, but hopefully by the morning, tomorrow we'll have, late morning, we'll have an update on that facility, if you will. And as promised, this month we also have our first departmental report. So we gave the board a meeting or two ago outline of departmental reports that we'll try to stagger through the year over a multi-year kind of cycle. We'll do them on the first meeting of the month if we have 2 meetings of the month. And so Kara and Corey are here because they're going to give us an update on special education. And I want to thank you both for coming and being our first departmental report for the board. The floor is all yours.
If not, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff. There it is.
It's coming. Oh, yeah, I see it. It's coming up. It just needs a little brighter, so.
A little brighter, you want the lights off so you can see?
I think it's just taking time to get it brighter.
Move like that.
Let there be light.
It's nice.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Does that work for you guys?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm Corey Geiser. I'm from the Oak Lane campus. I'm the special ed supervisor there. Kindergarten on my campus. And we're going to talk to you today a little bit about what we do, what we support, and some student size and dollar figures that go with that. The first thing that we want to talk to you about is what our guiding principles are. And our guiding principles are based on an idea that the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, you could read it, special education and related services to all of our students with IEPs, and that's grades 9 through our students at the transition center before they get out at the age of 22. Our programming is a flexible service model of delivery with a full continuum of services, and we offer the supports, modifications, and accommodations that go with that. For our students, we are offering the services along that continuum, and those are based on the intensity of those student needs. And that comes from the IEP team when those annual meetings are held. From there, the services are provided in the least restrictive environment to the maximum extent appropriate, and that is also determined by the student's IEP team. And that is done annually at those IEP meetings.
The next thing that we just wanted to walk you through was our special education philosophy. So what we did earlier this year is we met with the special education subcommittee as part of the strategic planning process. It was a representative group of special education staff as well as administration. And what you'll notice is that our philosophy really does directly align with that of the district. So just to highlight a couple of pieces, we believe in a continuous improvement through a continuum of services. We always want to maximize self-advocacy and independence. We strongly believe in rigor and support not only for our students, but also for our staff. Data is always driving our decision-making. Innovation and creativity are always present within our safe and inviting learning environments. Diversity continues to be an asset for us. Demographics for us in special education is a really important component. So much that the state actually looks at this very regularly. So what we thought we would do, is this clear enough for you? I'm not quite sure, it's looking a little blurry up here. But when we take a look at our district enrollment and we compare it to our special education enrollment, these numbers are as accurate as March when I pulled the information. Our special education population makes up about 12% of our total student body enrollment. And what we do is periodically throughout the school year, we submit data to the state. And what they do is they take a look at two different things. They want to take a look at and recognize specific ethnic groups and how that relates in special education to general education. And then they also take a further look to see what special education categories are falling within specific eligibility. So if you take a look at it, you'll see a lot of similarities. And I think this is something that as a community we should be really proud of. I know my historical perspective of Warren is a little brief. It's only since July. But based on the research that I've been able to do, proportionality has never been a large issue here at Warren, and kind of based on the numbers that I'm looking at here, I'm going out on a limb, I'm not anticipating it being an issue in the future. You can see that our three main populations are white, Hispanic, and African American students are really pretty similar, both within our district enrollment as well as our special education enrollment.
So then we want to talk to you about qualifying for services. And students come to the special education world in one of two ways. They either are already qualified by the time they move into the high school from one of our feeder schools. They were qualified through an eligibility process, or it's necessary for us to qualify them. When the kids come to the student service team, they're recommended through the deans, the guidance counselors, the social workers. It could be a school nurse. It could be something that we've received a letter. It could have come to one of you in the school board. And when that occurs, it's for one of three areas, either an emotional need, an academic need, or a behavioral need. It could be a parent that says, I want an IEP. It could be something that's simple, or it could be my child is struggling and I'm not sure what to do, who can help me. So we convene what's called a student service team meeting. There are small team meetings where the deans, the guidance counselors, and the social workers meet frequently, and then there are those large team meetings. And it's at that point that Kara and I get involved in those. The discussions can center around the parental concerns, the teacher reports that the teachers are saying, I'm seeing this problem, or the social workers or deans. And when that team comes together, we invite the parent, and if they want, their student there, because we need to hear everything that's going on. We need to understand the root of the situation. The student could already have a 504 plan, and the team has to decide, are we going to continue with those current supports, and are we going to look at, are they enough, or are we going to move forward and offer more? Some of the current supports that exist for students are they could be in fail-safe. That's a freshman kind of a safety net for a study hall program where one of our teachers supports the kids. It could be ARC if they're a sophomore. They can receive social work without having an IEP. They may be doing that already. And we may need to ramp that up. It might be that they're an A+ for some credit recovery. And at that point, we have to see how we can do that while they're still young, because it's critical to get those credits caught up before they come over to the all-in campus. If the team decides that something more is needed, then we look at that identification and implementation of those other supports. Do we need to add social work? Do we need to have a check-in, check-out system? And this is all before they become that special ed piece. And if none of those additional supports work, then do we want to move forward with that domain? A domain is that document where we look at the functional performance, the academic performance. We walk all the way through all the pieces with our psychologist there, and we identify those areas where we may need to actually conduct a case study evaluation. And it's at that point then that student service team turns them over, we obtain that parental consent, we provide the parent with their parental safeguards, and we move forward with that case study evaluation.
Okay, so qualifying for special education services up here at the secondary level is a little bit different than what you would see at an elementary level. Just to give you a little bit of a perspective on it, here in the state of Illinois, there's 13 different categories in which we can qualify a student for special education services. But for purposes of today, Corey and I wanted to walk you through kind of the main three that we would see up here. So specific learning disability and other health impairment or emotional disability. So as Corey had mentioned, that if concern is presented and we do decide to move forward with a case study for an evaluation, we get parent consent, the team collects their data, we sit down with the family, and then we walk through those concerns, or we walk through the information that we collected. After we do that, we start to walk through what we call different eligibility criteria. And before we do that for any eligibility area, there's kind of three pieces that we talk about, and then we call them determinant factors. We want to make sure that the student's difficulty in learning is not due to a lack of instruction in the area of reading, lack of instruction in the area of math, or has anything to do with the limited English proficiency. And then specifically for specific learning disability, there's actually 5 more that we go through. We want to rule out to make sure that the primary areas are not directly related to a vision impairment, a motor impairment, a hearing impairment. We also rule out an intellectual disability, an emotional disability. We take a look at any social-emotional, socioeconomic or any cultural factors. Okay. Next step is we walk through what we call our inclusionary criteria for a specific learning disability, and it's comprised of 3 different areas. One, we want to take a look at the student's educational progress over time. We want to take a look at whether or not they have had a discrepancy in skill over time, and then we also want to take a look at their instructional need to determine whether or not their needs exceed what we can provide in the general education side. If we answer no to any of those last 3 questions, the student is not eligible for specific learning disability. Okay. The majority of our students here at Warren come to us, as Corey had mentioned already, with an IEP. Our feeder districts do a really nice job in terms of identifying students, especially in the area of a specific learning disability. We do not have a lot of initial referrals that stem from any academic concerns. But if they do come up, we're equipped to handle that. So you want to walk through the other 2?
And that's just the thing, that when we look at these other 2 areas, in other health impairment and an emotional disability, that's where we see that those situations arise. Another health impairment is a condition where it produces a situation that is limited alertness, vitality, or strength, and it could be something like ADHD that the student already has a diagnosis for. It can be a medical diagnosis, anxiety, depression, mood disorder. When we look at those, we have a criteria that we go through, and we talk about what the educational impact is. A student can have ADHD, a student could have depression, but maybe there isn't an educational impact, and that's one of the questions that we have to ask. What is that? Because if it isn't impacting the school day, then the team has to make the decision, is that student eligible or not? There is no exclusionary criteria here except for that one factor, that educational impact. Under an emotional disability, it's a little bit different. It's the inability to initiate or maintain appropriate relationships with both peers and adults. It's the mood disorder, the depression, the anxiety that becomes so great. It's under those normal circumstances when students can't function in the school day, when they can't make it through a lunch period. Sometimes it's the unstructured times that get the kids and not during the class time. And it's the physical illnesses or the fears that are associated with that. The one exclusionary factor with that emotional disability is that it cannot be explained by the intellectual, sensory, or the health factors, which again, we have to rule those out. Sometimes in special ed, it's like science, where you're saying, we have to make sure that you have your vision and hearing screening first, because maybe you just can't see the board, and that's where you're struggling. So we go through all of those things, because when, especially with an emotional disability, we qualify a student for services, that's a big label to have, to say, my child is emotionally disabled, depending on which form of the state you're gonna go with. It's a big label to have, and it's a difficult label to get rid of. So we want to make sure we take that very seriously when we work through qualifying students. When we look at the initial referrals at both campuses, it's usually related to that anxiety, depression, the school refusal, and/or the mental illness. At Oak Plain, because we have the younger kids, we see a greater number of those large team meetings. This year so far, we've had 30, with 13 referred for those initial case study evaluations. At Almond, it's a little less because, again, we're trying to work through those things through the team support, with only 8 large team meetings and 4 being referred for those case studies. It isn't unusual to see that number, but it's something that we try and have that support in place for the kids to get rid of that. We also wanted to share a couple of quotes, one from 2008 and one from 2014, so that you could see that this isn't just a Lake County trend or a Gurnee trend, that this is something that we see in the country. The anxiety, disruptive, and mood disorders are 3 to 4 times as prevalent in the secondary schools as in the elementary, and that in 2014, an estimated 2.8 million adolescents between 12 and 17 had one major depressive episode. What we see is that we've got some supports in place because we do want to address this just for our kids as a whole. We recognize that this is an issue. At Oak Plain, we've got the Alyssa's mission that we hold twice a year. It's a screening program. This year was the first year that we did the Illinois Youth Survey at all grades. Normally it's done at grades 10 and 12. We've also got Barb McAdam from, I believe, the Warren Township Center. She is a substance abuse counselor, and she's in half day each week at each campus so that she can meet with kids who either it's a part of their court order or it's kids who have been recommended for some counseling. We've got the community partnerships, and those include the Warren Township Center, the Lake County Health Department, the Gurnee Counseling Center, we've got Bradley Counseling Center, we've got one in Grays Lake called the Community Youth Network. And then next year, we're also looking, and we've got in the developing stages, the Healthy Devils program. And what that is, the goal for that, as it's being formed, is that it's going to be the social workers providing a club-like atmosphere where the kids themselves can be proud of making those positive choices so that they can share that with their peers and thus help Warren to be a stronger, better place.
Kind of continuing around the social emotional component, sometimes we get questions as to why some students receive services while others do not. So just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview about some changes that have happened actually several years ago in terms of the ED criteria. So several years ago, you might have heard a student that might have had an oppositional defiant disorder or a conduct disorder, something along those lines that just kind of falls under the larger umbrella of a social maladjustment. Years ago, they used to qualify for emotional disability. They have removed that and have really focused on more so the internal emotion. So just wanted to walk you through a couple of the differences between a student that might present as socially maladjusted in comparison to an emotional disability. What we did is we just took a couple of big kind of topic areas that you would see here in a school setting. So if you take a look at the school behavior, for a student that has an emotional disability, you're really taking a look at they're unable to comply with the teacher. They have an inability. As opposed to a student with a social maladjustment, it's more of an unwillingness. Okay, your attitude towards school. Our students with an emotional disability really thrive on that structure. It might be a little bit of resistance in the beginning, but through consistent practices with the structure, they really do thrive in that. Where you have a student that might exhibit a social maladjustment, they really rebel against those rules and the structure. It is just something that has not worked for them based on what the research has shown. When you take a look at school attendance, both students, both kind of groups, you'll see difficulties with school attendance as well as educational performance. But in terms of school attendance, students with an emotional disability is usually more so around the anxiety and the depression, where you have a student that might fall under the the social maladjustment. It's due to choice. As well as with the educational performance, you'll see uneven and inconsistent achievement with both groups. However, it's the underlying reasons that are really what we're looking at in terms of the causes. So for an emotional disability, you're going to again see the anxiety and the depression component. For the education performance of a student who's socially maladjusted, it's more around the truancy component and just the reduced and poor attitude around school. A couple of more peer relations and social skills we can kind of talk about together. For students with an emotional disability, they typically, and again I'm speaking in generalities, might have some difficulty making friends. That's usually due to reduced, poorly developed social skills. They might have difficulty initiating to conversations. They might have difficulty, maneuvering their way just through the social nuances of the day. In terms of students who, again, might fall under the larger umbrella of the social maladjustment component, they have a peer group. They're receptive. However, it's usually in a subgroup with students that might engage in some of these same inappropriate types of behaviors. Students with the social maladjustment typically have very well developed social skills. Excuse me. They know the social norms, they know the rules, however, there's a choice to disregard those. In terms of the last two, our students with an emotional disability have a tendency to be a little bit more self-critical and really try to avoid any type of risk-taking. They kind of find a niche and like to stay in it, don't like to go outside their comfort zone too much. Where you have a student with a social maladjustment component, a lot more kind of, for lack of a better phrase, finger pointing, a lot more blaming of others for their actions, as well as that have a tendency to engage in risky behavior. There's definitely some overlap, but as part of the team and the evaluation to kind of decipher, how that works out and whether or not it is a social maladjustment or a true emotional disability. Okay.
Okay. We also want to talk about the services and supports that are in place for kids, because that is where we come into our own. We have case management at all of our locations. Last year, we switched to a case management model. Instead of having all of our special ed teachers be case managers, we felt that we could be more effective in having a fewer number of case managers. It reduces the errors in our IEP paperwork. And so this year, we actually have 4. We have 2 at Oak Plain, we have 2 at Almond. We have a little bit of a different model in how we manage the kids, but the case managers are with those kids for 2 years. So they get to know the student, they get to know the needs, they get to know the families before they hand them off to this campus. And just like at this campus, they get to know the kids, that helps them to write their summaries of performance when the kids grade out. At our, we also have program case managers for the disability specific. We have itinerants who handle vision students, hearing students. We have an autism itinerant. And our speech language pathologists also case manage. They have a small number of students that they case manage, and then they provide the related service support for the others. We also have program case managers, both at Oak Plain and at Almond, who handle students who are in our functional category. Those are students who have a little more needs that are exhibited in their IEPs, and so they're in self-contained classrooms. Our ED kids, we call it our evolution program because we'd like to see them evolving into something better, so we renamed that. Here at Almond, they also have the life skills students that are our neediest population here on campus. And then at transition, it pretty much follows what's here with the programming for the evolution, or for the experiential and for the functional kids. Our case managers, before I move forward with this, that's okay. Our case managers work to partner with our gen ed teachers. They work with the guidance counselors, they work with the social workers. Their implementation of the IEP is what's critical in order for the education component to be successful for the student. And that's why we felt with fewer people to deal with, our teachers can be more successful, our guidance counselors can be more successful, and I think that we've seen a greater improvement in the management of the kids, because these case managers are not teachers, they manage the kids in the IEP, and that's what's important.
Okay, along those lines, we offer a full continuum of services here at Warren. They can range from general education classes with accommodations all the way down to residential. When we take a look at after our general education, and we do have several students who are in honors and advanced placement classes, the only type of support and services that they require are some accommodations and case management that Corey just walked you through. But we have co-talk classes. That's where we have a special education teacher pair up with a general education teacher. They team teach, they parallel teach, they co-plan. They support all of the students within the classroom, just not the special education, just not the general. It's a very collaborative effort. We also offer classes which we call supervised study hall, which allows for some pre-teaching, reteaching of skill sets, academic, organizational strategies, study skill strategies, things along those lines. Our next level of support are instructional cross-categorical classes. These are for students that might have some academic deficits that are, roughly like 2 to 3 grade levels, below. We have students, I can speak here at Almond, that do actually have a combination of these 3. It's really individualized. It's not that you are just in co-taught or just instructional. It's all based on student needs, and it's that I and IEP. It's all individualized. We do have some students who require a greater level of need that are in all self-contained special education programs, and that means that they receive special education services for pretty much their entire day. We do offer extended school year programming. Typically, it's for our students that are in the self-contained programs, it's made the decision for ESY is made on an annual basis at their IEP. There's specific sets of criteria that the students have to meet. Sometimes we do have students whose needs exceed what we can offer here at Warren, so they would attend either a public or a private therapeutic day school, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And then we also do have some students who require supports and services through residential settings, and that's where they live there as well as receive their academic supports. All of our students have access to the related services.
We also have, as you know, the transition program, functioning toilets aside. The Bridges Transition Program, as it's now called, is under the ALOC grant. That's the Alternative Learning Opportunities Program, and that's where some of the funding comes from. And this is for our students who have completed 4 years here in this campus or at Warren but have not yet received their high school diploma, and they need to go on to learn life skills or some other more community experience. So we place them in our program. They can stay through the day before they turn 22. The goals for this are to focus on that employability and those daily living skills. We're not talking about kids who are going to go out and they're going to be a car salesman and an Audi dealer. We're talking about students who want to get a job, maintain a job, be appropriate at a job, and then have those independent daily living skills. That's really what we're looking for. We work on their academic and functional achievement because we do have some students who may go on to college. We're using the personal success program at CLC right now, and we've got some kids who are taking classes there. So we want to work on some of those academic skills though. We're working on going from high school to post-school activities. We're connecting them to some of those other post-secondary education. We've got a young man who's going to consider a forklift training program. We've got a young lady who we practiced with her. She took the bus, she independently out to CLC and did an early childhood program, an exposure program. So we're doing a little bit of that. And then we've got the continuing in adult education. The transition program is partially funded, like I said, through AWA, and the district reimbursement is full funding because it's based on student attendance. It's the average daily attendance that we take for a 3-month period, and then we receive that funding back to assist in paying for that program. Oh yeah, because this is where I have a lot of fun. We work with an articulation process for our feeder schools. We strived over the last 3 or 4 years to really have our feeder schools understand what the programming is here. This year was the first year that we actually held a meeting with the case managers. Not only did Kara and I meet with the directors of those schools, the big schools, as well as staff from Prairie Crossing, we want to meet with the case managers as well, because when our case managers talk to the case managers at those schools, it helps that student transition to high school better. Our kids are very unique in that they transition to high school, to Auburn, and then to the real world, college or whatever. And so we want to make that first transition as smooth and seamless as possible. So we work on course offerings, on placements. We talk about what the supports look like at high school. It's entirely different. If you've ever worked in a grade school district, it's entirely different in the lower grades than what it looks like here. And because we only have 4 short years with those kids, we have to make sure that we do everything as correctly as possible. We work on secondary transition planning. At age 14 and a half, our transition specialist gets involved and asks these kids, what do you want to do when you're done with high school? And a lot of kids just look like, got here, I don't know. We've now started having Bernadette Commenda, our transition specialist, help the feeder schools to initiate, because sometimes the kids come to us and they're already 14 and a half, some are 15. And we've got to have that plan in place. And the less we have to rewrite it, the better off we can do at implementing that. So we have had Bernadette help those case managers as well for a seminar that we did here where they came to us. The case managers are also starting to attend. Both the case managers here who work with those freshmen and our case managers are attending the IP meetings at those feeder schools. We want them to get the feel. We want the parents to be comfortable. We want the student to know that they've got a face they can go to. When they walk in that door with 2,200 kids, they're not going to be lost. They're going to have at least one face they're going to be comfortable with. So we've got the case managers going to those meetings, and the parents and families are a little bit more comfortable because they know somebody here. And that's an important step that we're making.
reimbursements. All right, so in terms of our special education staff, I've provided you with a list of the different job descriptions, job titles per se, of all of the people who kind of fall within our departments. It's important for you to know that for all of our certified staff, we receive a $9,000 reimbursement annually for their salaries, and for our classified staff, we receive $3,500. So we do have quite a large department. We offer full continuum of service, and it requires a lot of staff, so we felt that it was important for you guys to have the understanding of the reimbursement components. In terms of our CEDAW program costs, this would be an example of a public therapeutic day school. So as you know, we maintain a partnership with CEDAW. We currently have 32 students who are utilizing one of their programs or supports. You can see here that it is quite a range in terms of tuition for students. It's based on their need as well as their programming. We do not receive any reimbursement for our students who attend CEDAW.
On the private side of things, we currently have 56 students who are enrolled in private therapeutic day schools. The cost depends on the school. It's anywhere from $33,000 to $79,000. The school that we work with the most, the school family, is the Connections school system. We've got Connection Libertyville, the new Connections, and Connections Academy East in Lake Forest. We've got South Campus and the new Connections Academy in Palatine, and they provide most of our support. They seem to fit what our kids need the best. The district is responsible for a 2 per cap at about 10.9 for those, and the remaining difference is reimbursed. Our goal is always, when we've got those kids at the therapeutic day schools, to work with the IEP team there and to bring those kids back. We always want to make sure that those kids know that if it's appropriate, the home school is where they should be. And we don't do that in a quick manner. We take it very seriously. We look at 1 to 2 classes. We look at an unstructured setting so that when we bring that student back, if it's appropriate and the IEP team agrees to it, that then we've got them here and then that number reduces. So that's one of the key things that we do, because the kids should be homeschooled here at Warren. They should be receiving the education that we provide and not paying somebody else. When we need them, they're there, but we always want them back here.
And just to add that, I would say that we have successfully transitioned a number of students back. I mean, I know that they had started transition with you guys at O'Plain last year. I can think of 4 off the top of my hat that have returned full-time and are being very successful here this year. So it's exciting.
Yes, and the parents and students appreciate it.
Residential programming. We do currently have 3 students who are receiving their services through a residential setting. It's important for you guys to know, just like with the private therapeutics, there is a range in terms of overall cost. So currently what we did is with our 3 students that we have placed, that's the range in terms of the overall salary. You'll see that the tuition. You'll see the average yearly cost. The reimbursement rate for the room and board, we are reimbursed right now 90 to 95%, just kind of depending on what funds are available with the state. And the tuition follows the same guidelines as the private therapeutic. So the district is responsible for 2 times per cap, and then we are reimbursed at the remaining 90 to 94%.
We submit for that reimbursement. We work with the state for that, and anything that's left over, they usually do the reimbursement at about the 90 and then kick in that leftover at the end. So that reimbursement process is an ongoing thing.
So another big cost for us in our department is transportation. So since reimbursement is a year back, right now we are in the 15-16 school year, yes? So right now we are receiving reimbursement for the 14-15 school year. So when we started to crunch numbers, the last full year that we could give you with the actual money we put out and the money we got back was 13-14 school year. So you'll see we spent roughly $1.9 million in terms of transportation. However, we were reimbursed almost 76% for about $1.5 million in terms of reimbursement for transportation. Okay? Do you have any questions for us? Here, let me get them. I'm up. It's a lot of information.
Very informative.
Do you have questions about it?
Thank you. This one? Okay. Then we will move on to new business. Thank you, ladies, by the way. Very nice. The next item on the agenda is the advertising for athletic field scoreboards and building.
Especially with our 100-year celebration coming up, one of the subgroups of the 100-year committee is the Resource Development Committee. One of the avenues we're looking at is advertising on the athletic field scoreboards and other building locations. Board Policy 8:25, Community Relations, requires prior approval from the board for advertisements on these facilities and buildings. We are asking that the Board of Education approve the motion to approve advertising on athletic field scoreboards or other building locations in accordance with this board policy beginning April 2016 through the end of the 16-17 school year. This would also be for the some of the booster clubs as they assist us in raising money for the 100-year and for their programs. Any questions from the board?
Carol, do you think this policy is inclusive of every single piece of the district property? Or do we need to tweak that policy?
I don't think we need to tweak the policy since it does talk about building locations, any of the athletic fields. I think we've got everything covered. Is there something else that you can think of? Well, we're, actually the poles in the parking lot could
I'm just
be.
saying, does that policy need to include like a couple other things or somehow so that we encompass everything in the property?
We can amend the motion to.
I mean, I think this is, the motion's great. I just want to make sure that that policy includes every piece of
We
property.
can take it on that, certainly.
Well, what we want to do,
Because building locations may not be considered the light poles.
yes, we want to do the light posts in the parking lot, so if we can amend the policy to
Next time.
include.
Or do we need to do it tonight?
Motion.
The motion, we can amend the motion. Because I think building
Confused.
facilities, building facilities is generic.
Scoreboards,
Yeah.
building locations, and all district property? Would that cover everything?
That would cover it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, yes, I think the policy is inclusive enough.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
I move to approve advertising on athletic fields, scoreboards, other building locations, and all district property in accordance with Board Policy 8:25, Community Relations, effective April 2016 through the end of the 2016-17 school year.
Second.
So I have a question,
Yes.
just for a point of clarification, really. So this, even though this is going to be used to support the 100-year effort and celebration, the teams and the booster clubs can sell their own advertising, at which point that money will go to them. Am I hearing that correctly?
You are hearing that correctly.
Okay.
We are working with the football boosters to support some of the programs that they do,
Understood.
and the dugout club for this spring, to support for this spring, but then all of our efforts after the spring are going to the 100-year committee, and they're working with us to help sell that advertising and generate enough proceeds to really make it a spectacular celebration that it should be.
So all advertising next year would go towards the 100-year committee? Basically, or there could be other ones
Basically,
come
yeah,
up, but
yeah.
I understand. I understand, I'm just making sure I understand, that's all.
Yeah.
I don't want to delay it, I think it's a great thing about,
The football program is going to assist us in this process, and for that assistance, we're going to help support. We
Understood.
meet the teams every
Yeah,
week, so we will help support that.
The other piece it's now allowing us to do is after next school year, right, we'll be able to be a lot more explicit with those groups that are trying to use the
Right.
facilities to sell that, hey, we need board permission for this. So
Okay.
it's a great idea and you're raising money, but just as a reminder, right, after the 16-17 school year, if there's something that comes in the fall of 17, we need to bring it back to the board, right? It's not under the umbrella anymore.
got it.
Because chances are, if they get something now, they may want to just continue with it, but.
And put it into the different bucket.
Right.
That's- But that money comes obviously directly into the school.
It's going through the Warren Foundation.
Okay, for the 100-year celebration.
Right.
But if another organization does it, say like, I don't care who the boost, the Warren Blue Devil Boosters, that money goes to them and then they spend it however they like. Or the Dugout Club, if they sell advertising, that money goes to them.
Just for this year.
And for and then we have to vote on it again going into the following year.
Correct.
Yeah, got it. I'm 100% on board.
Thank you.
No problem. Roll call.
Motion by Campbell, second by Biondi. Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Mr. Munda.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell.
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I have 7 yes. Motion carries.
The next item on the agenda is the EF German tour program for the spring break 2017.
Board members, in your packet, there's some information, and Kathy Dexheimer and Cindy Slater are here. Just to give a quick little brief overview, and make sure the board, if there are any questions, opportunity to ask. Ladies?
Thank you, board members, for allowing us to come before you and speak briefly about this program. I've had the fortunate advantage of being able to talk to you many years before regarding previous programs, and there's been a request to move to tours. So we're looking at it and did research and found out that the EF Tour company that the social studies program has used successfully also has a very good program that also is geared towards German. And so we have been moving forward with communication with the EF Tour program in wanting to do their German tour program. That German tour program, though, also has a very historical and cultural focus to it. And so we've also been in contact with our social studies department. And we have, at this point in time, after talking much with Cheryl Parmenter, we have Brian Oberhauser and Ryan Anderson. Ryan's participated with 3 of the EF tours in the past, who are representatives from the social studies department that will be accompanying us, assuming we have the appropriate number of students. So there will be 2 of us from the German department, Cindy and myself, and then Ryan and Brian from the social studies department, and we are working with them to do a cross-curricular tour program, even though it's geared German, if you will. There's an emphasis, emphasis on the history, particularly Cold War, World War II history, and it touches a little on medieval prior to that. And so we wanted to bring in that to it. We like the fact of the pricing of this, the international support and security and safety networks, liability and insurance, and offers for the parents, as well as the payment plans that they offer through their tour company, and that has been received well previously. Sydney, she will be getting the official training from EF. I've done many tours with groups before, as Ryan has. Ryan is also newer, so I don't know, Sydney, if you want to add anything to this? She's just getting mentored and being able to possibly take over in the future.
Yes, so I will be on the official register as the tour leader, but that's so I can go through all the training and kind of be one of the, Kathy's been on these trips, so she knows exactly kind of the lay of the land, and so it will be good for me to kind of get through, be on the ground. And I'm actually working with the Western Civ Department next year too, and so I will have contact with Ryan, who's been on the trip before.
We've all 4 of us are already back together to discuss things as well, and have a lot of support there. And I'd like to open this up for any questions that you have for us regarding this proposal.
Are there any questions? As long as you plan on being safe.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I would make, since we had our last conversation at this board meeting around the safety of students on these type of trips because of the type of activities we see worldwide. We've had 2 more incidences,
Brussels.
one in Brussels, and I guess you count the California incident. So
If it's.
it's nothing that we decide tonight, but I think long-term, understanding our responsibility and our liability in approving these trips and what the backup plan is. I don't remember the detail from our last conversation, but there wasn't much of a backup plan. You buy this insurance.
Doesn't cover terrorism.
Right, financially, I mean, I think these companies need to start thinking about how they structure and how they offer a different level of insurance, like, I'm out, and I want all my money back, versus percentages.
Correct. They have increased some of their insurance. We were told that they also increased and dramatically increased their liability insurance. I think they're moving in that direction. One of the advantages for me is going on this tour because I have been traveling since 1993 to Germany, and I do have many contacts in country. It would be very, very easy for me to also work with them to have an easy backup plan, because I can automatically go to former schools that we've had exchange programs with. We can contact them, we can move the kids to families and safety networks right away. So there's another element there that we have a connection with from the former partner high schools and colleagues, etc. Germany has been one of the countries, though, that if there has been any sort of attempt or whatever, they've stopped them all. They've been a little bit ahead of the games of Brussels and Paris and some of the other groups, so they do have a little bit of a head up on that, and a little bit, I think, more proactive in some other countries. Not that it could not happen, it could happen anywhere.
Right.
But I was just traveling there this past summer and felt very secure. But I believe that it's going to be something that will have to be definitely considered in the future to see how things happen and how things affect this.
And I know you'll do this already. Based on our last conversation, I think we had Ms. Parmenter contact each and every one of the parents. And we really need to make sure we're buttoned up from a communication standpoint back to all the parents, that they fully understand the insurance programs and the protection that they can buy. Because I think it's optional. We sent our daughter on one of these, probably didn't buy insurance, but we need to make sure they really fully understand what they're committing to, what they're signing on, and have that almost a documented conversation as part of that process. I know you guys do that already, but.
No, I think that is wise to evidently push that. When I done the exchange programs, it was required, it just came with it naturally. That was part of the package deal. That is a thought that we could require it as part of it, but I think we would have to work with EF on that, and that would raise up the cost just slightly, but that would be a requirement that all the families sign up for that, and that's definitely something that we could talk with Ryan about putting that in there, and obviously communicate that to the families, that may be a requirement in the future for you.
And don't get me wrong, I think these trips are phenomenal. We sent our daughter on one of these trips. Great experience. We just need to make sure as times change, that we kind of evolve the process with that.
Okay. Well, I think we certainly need to keep abreast of the situation and make sure people know that they're not getting insurance coverage for terrorism. You know, if they buy it, that's not covered, just because they might be surprised, I guess, in the end. Okay, so we need a motion.
I move to approve the EF German tour trip for spring break 2017.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Drake, second by Munda. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Yeah.
I love Germany.
Mostly,
We
kids
would.
learn and enjoy the experience and stay safe.
I love Germany.
Next item is the approval of the 2016-2017 student handbook, student parent handbook changes, which we discussed in the committee reports. So unless anybody has any other questions about that, we need a motion.
I'll move to approve the 2016-17 student parent handbook changes.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by by Munda, second by Drake. Ms. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 7 yes. Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of summer workers for maintenance and technology for 2016.
Each year, the district requests additional summer help for projects that must be completed before the beginning of the school year. You have a memo from Mr. Mauer and Mr. Parrott for maintenance workers, and a memo from Mr. Demore on technology workers. The cost for maintenance and what they look at is an overall budget, because some of the students take vacations and things, so we hire typically 4 people for maintenance, but the hours may vary. We may put a 5th one in there because somebody's working half a summer or something, but it wouldn't exceed the cost. So the budget, which is appropriated, they're asking, maintenance is asking for $11,655, and technology is asking for summer workers with a cost not to exceed $16,704. So we are asking the board to approve the motion to hire 2016 summer workers for maintenance and technology in the amounts presented. Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Yes,
On the memo to you dated April 7th,
yes.
I'm curious as to why we are anticipating people coming back year after year, or even talking about additional years. It says in paragraph 2, per the decision made in previous years, workers will be paid $9.25 an hour in their first summer, and an additional 25 cents an hour for each year thereafter, which is implying that we're keeping the same people. And I guess I don't understand why we'd be talking about additional years anyway. And is this incorporated in somehow in what we're voting on tonight? That kind of like a retention.
Students apply in Amtrak like any other applicant to the district. There are certain workers that have really done a good job for us in the past, and we look to retain those. And we feel that's a reward for the hard work that they do. But we also hire brand new summer workers that don't necessarily have any experience with the district. It really depends on who applies and what our experience has been with them. So $9.25, again, we're really looking at the total number, dollar value, not to exceed. So,
But the calculations are all based on 925.
they are, and that does make the assumption that they would be first-year workers, but again, we would look for some latitude that if we do have some returning students, that we would reduce the number of hours just to not exceed the amount we're asking the board to commit to. I hope that answers your question.
So kind of, so it will still be within the
Total dollar amount.
11,655 budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, we need a motion.
I move to approve hiring 2016 summer workers for maintenance and technology as presented.
Second.
I'd like to get on my soapbox.
Okay.
My soapbox is that these jobs should be used for students who need them, not students whose parents are connected to the district, whether it be as a board member, as an administrator's child, or a parent of a friend of a friend. I think that these jobs really need to be given to students who need them financially. And so that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Motion by Conway, second by Walls. Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 7 yes, motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of hiring recommendations for Exhibit A. Need a motion?
I'll move to approve Exhibit A, hiring recommendations 226 through 246 is posted.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Drake. Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Okay, the next item is the approval of the bills, so we'll start with the Hodges and Louisi, which is, I move to approve the payment of the bill for check number 330148 for $7,514.87 to Hodges and Louisi.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
No.
You're doing just fine.
Mrs. Biondi?
No.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I have 5 yes and 2 no, motion carries.
Carol, can I ask a question about that? Because on the statement, it said that it was for services for January 2016, implying that, was it all just for that month? The
One day.
$7,500, basically
One day.
$500 was for one day or 1 month?
Three.
I mean, it normally, it spans over a time period.
Oh,
You know, it'll say like from January to February 2016 or,
it
Yeah.
says for 1/16, so January 2016, right here.
That's
For the month of January 2016. Yes.
For January.
January.
For January.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Did we vote already?
Yes,
Yes.
it did.
Nice.
We're done?
Okay, next.
So the next one, we're breaking out check number 330031,
5-1.
51,
And handwriting.
terrible. 330051 in the amount of $3,966.
Is it a motion?
I move to approve the payment.
I'll move to approve the payment.
Oh, you're gonna do it?
for-
Okay.
For check number 330051 in the amount of $3,966.
Second.
Carol, you know what that check was for?
Yes, I do.
Would you care to let us know?
Yes, that was reimbursements to our head softball coach
Jenna
Charbonneau?
Charbonneau, thank you.
for expenses incurred in her duties as a softball coach. So,
Spring break trip?
yes, that's exactly what it was.
Thank you. Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Mrs. Biondi. Ms. Campbell?
yes,
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
I'm going to abstain
Why?
because that check's going to my lovely, talented daughter.
So I have 6 yes and 1 abstention, motion carries.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the regular meeting minutes and executive session. Oh, the rest of the bills, what's the number? I'm skipping that.
The number is $1,032,201.19. 1032201.19.
Okay, so I move to approve payment of the bills for April 12, 2016 in the amount of $1,032,201.19.
Second.
Roll call.
Can I just say something? I guess I have a concern, a transparency issue. For some reason, and I don't know why, maybe you can explain it, Carol.
Sure.
The summary of these bills, and you go down and you look at the column on invoice number, and you see multiple, 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 multiple. That's the invoice number. Then you go to invoice description, and it says multiple invoices. And then you go to PO number, and it says multiple. So for me as a board member, I don't really know what this stands for, but from the public's perspective, from a transparency issue, they're gonna be like, what is this? And why, when we used to give way more detail, why are we now going to this very, I don't know, I mean, it's very, I look at it as concerning.
Can I
It's
just
just
go a
concerning to me
step
because it just says multiple invoices on the summary sheet.
Can I go a step further? Like on check number 330079, I don't know what 12.5 capital LLC is. And multiple invoices for $20,000 tells me absolutely nothing.
We are, in response, and I totally agree. Ms. Burden, our payroll or accounts payable coordinator, has been working with the format in response to Mrs. Biondi's request to
Have a total.
have a total. And in this particular case, we haven't got it exactly the way we want it, but we've been working with the formats to get it in Skyward, to get it back to where.
Okay, so it's a process.
It's a process. It's a
All right.
process.
Okay.
Cool.
So basically though, is there a way we can get more details?
We
Because this is-
absolutely can. I just have to work with Ms. Bergen to get the parameters right in Skyward like they used to be. So,
Why did we change what we were doing?
Well,
Thank you, Carol.
we were trying to, the way the bills printed out originally, you would have multiple lines of way at the bottom of that vendor, you would have a check total.
Mhm.
And then we asked, Mrs. Biondi asked that we change that format to make it easier to read. We haven't quite got it right yet. But we've gone through several iterations of different formats, and we're gonna go through Skyward, which is our financial reporting system, to set the right parameters to get it back to the format we did a couple years ago.
okay,
So it is a process
Yeah.
we're working on.
okay, that's what I couldn't understand.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
Okay. So where are we, Gene?
We did
We had a
approve the bills,
motion.
so we are in the minutes
Okay,
of March 15th.
next item on the agenda.
Wait, no, we're not. We did not.
So we
No, we haven't voted on
We
the,
have a motion and a second. Oh,
and we had a discussion.
Okay, you're not in charge anymore.
You're right.
It's been a long day,
So
right?
you have to be, I have to
I
get
know.
I don't want to vote, she doesn't want to vote, I want to skip items.
I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Anderson and a second by Mr. Munder.
That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
And just to make a comment to Carol, I have big shoulders so I can bear the burden. Thank you. No, I'm kidding, don't worry about it. I did ask because we had so many little numbers, and then they all got crunched together, and you couldn't tell where the numbers were.
I totally understand, and I haven't been happy with the format of it either, so
Okay.
it's a very valid request on your part.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, do you remember my thoughts on the format? You didn't forget about
Yes,
it.
we are working on some format changes for you too.
Carol, what about mine?
First,
May I
we're-
just say that the motion, yes.
Let's keep going.
we are working on yours, Mr.
Very
Gray.
bad.
Yes.
Can you work on world peace in your spare time? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're on the motion for the meeting minutes from March 15th. So I move to approve the regular meeting minutes and executive session minutes of March 15th, 2016. We had a few absences that day.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes,
Mrs. Bianchi?
abstain because I was not present.
Mrs. Conway?
Same reason. It's not there.
You're abstaining.
I'm abstaining.
Mr. Drake?
I abstain, I wasn't.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
So we have 4 yes and 3 abstentions. Motion does carry.
Thank you very much. Okay, so on the next item, we have the special meeting minutes, which we're going to make a slight adjustment to. Would you care to address that?
Just on the very second page, the very ending of those minutes, there's kind of a, although it would kind of imply that the board took a vote on something, which there was no vote at that board meeting where it says it was decided. So it may be just as easy to say the administration committed itself to improving attendance and grade point averages rather than it was decided, if that's fair for everyone. Just because it might imply that there was a vote that wasn't on the agenda for the evening.
I have a question. Is the discussion going to continue? Because I am so sorry, but I was the one that brought it up and I'm the one that missed the meeting. Because I know there was a great presentation of current status, but we really didn't go ahead with what could happen if we changed our hours. And what is it I want to say? Not statistics, but research shows that overall when we start later, it doesn't matter about first and last periods. Overall, students achieve a 2-point plus higher academic achievement than when they stay early starts. So I know that you all discussed the current status, but I don't think we looked at that the board looked at the future status and the impact of the possibility of a change resulting in an overall. Plus, research also shows the kids are involved in less accidents because of the later start. And research also indicates that students who have later starts don't go to bed later because they have a later start. They'll still go to bed at the same time, which is later than they should be, but still. So I would like it, that we continue the conversation if possible.
I think what we did, I mean, at least for a couple of years, was on our end, right? We committed ourselves to saying, we see some of our problems right now in our program, right? We know we need to work on them. And we think tangibly we can do some things to start addressing it first thing in the morning. We talked about some of those things that might help. We didn't totally take it off the table. We said in a couple of years, if we can start to address the problem of what's going on first thing in the morning in some different ways, then it absolutely should stay with us. But we also know that we haven't done everything we can for sure to try to make sure that we give our kids the best start they can. So that's kind of where I think it was, we summarized it.
Well, yeah, I think we discussed the implications and ramifications of making a change, a significant change, which is like, flipping everybody back an hour. So that, or flipping them over, doing whatever to make a significant change. And because of some of the logistics for us and the way we're currently constructed with sharing buses and doing stuff like that, there would be a very significant financial impact of making a change unless the feeder districts went with us. So it's really a much larger subject than just, we could decide to do it unilaterally, but then the parents would be in an uproar because I got this kid started over here.
It could compete in
I understand. Well, athletics is not what we're here for. We are here for
No, I understand. Yeah, no, I get that, but the athletics is still part of the
Research also,
Okay,
will also say that those that participate in extracurricular activities.
We all know that.
Academically.
Yes, he's right about that too. But what I'm saying is, just about the later start time, is that it's.
Because we're tied in with the other districts.
Well, and plus the families are tied
Right,
together, so
right.
then you go, and I was thinking about it this way too, Liz, is that if all of a sudden you got young kids starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, what do the parents do with them?
Right.
That have to go to work. So I mean, it's a huge,
Oh,
it's much larger than us, so I think that keeping it as a topic that we are interested in, I think is a good thing. But I think, you know, unless it becomes a community-wide project, it's nothing that we can really address by ourselves.
Oh, that's why I said we
Right.
needed to bring the park district
Right.
and all these other entities in, because it didn't just affect us, it
Right.
affected a lot more than us.
And I think some of our own data, I think Pat shared with us, that when we have our late starts, our attendance is horrendous.
It's been worse, yeah.
It gets worse.
Yeah, which is weird,
But
but,
that's because it's only a once-a-week thing. If you started,
Well,
yeah,
you
that
could-
has an
you could-
impact
You
too.
could
Plus,
draw
it's
that.
the first day of the week,
Right.
which has another impact. I mean,
What we'll do is-
research shows that
Right.
Monday is the worst day of the work week.
oh. don't do it.
You know, more heart attacks, more strokes, more things happen on Monday than any other day of the work week. So I understand, I just wanted to make sure that that subject's not closed.
It's not completely closed, Liz.
Okay, thank
Fair
you.
enough. We should have to vote, right, Gene?
Yes.
Yes, you do. We don't even have a motion.
Well, in that case, I suggest that we get a motion.
I move to approve the special meeting minutes of March 29th, 2016.
You can't move, you weren't there. Oh, yes, you were, but I'm sorry.
Liz, you were the only one not there.
I know, I'm sorry.
Second.
Quick, Gene.
Motion by Drake, second by Anderson. Mr. Munda.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes, oh, yeah, no, I can't move, I can't abstain, sorry.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson.
Absolutely.
So we
I have one question.
We have 6
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
1 abstention, motion carries.
I have a question. The honor roll came out in February, but I didn't look at it until today. And I noticed that there's a student who has a 4.00, I think it's 1. He's so proud of his grade point average, and yet he wasn't on either the honors or the high honors roll. So I'm wondering if there were other students who might have accidentally been overlooked. I know that there are, if you have a D, you can't be on honor roll. I know that's one of our policies, but I don't think this student had a D, so I don't know. Is it possible to look over the honor roll and make sure no other students were omitted?
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking John.
Just after the meeting, we can talk about it.
Yes, it's possible.
Okay, thank you.
It's not probable, but it's possible. Oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course.
It's possible that the student you might be looking for is on the opt-out list, which means that we can't publicize their name.
We'll just have to find out.
It's a possibility.
It's
Oh,
one of the things it could be, but
that's
you guys
a
can talk about
good
it.
possibility. I didn't know that. Thank you.
We'll talk about that later. Okay, I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, we have a motion by Anderson and a second by Munda.
That works.
Mrs. Biondi.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
Mr. Walls.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Munda.
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I have 7 yes, motion carries.
Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, John.
I know, that's why I remember.
Kristen, thanks for joining us tonight. Really?
Well, I know.
Back to the shop. There you go.
All right.
All right.
Okay, everyone. Is there anything? Are there any signatures? Thanks, Tom.
No signal. Yeah, I gotta get some sleep. Long day, long day. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit.
My husband keeps saying it out. You have to do it. I'll do it.
All right.
It's a good part, John, didn't Mike has done.
He says crazy shit.
Yeah, this one's trying to.
Where's my accent? Well, why not? I'm going
Yeah, they don't have
Why not?
Oh, yeah.
Telling me, and then I noticed what's on there.
Well, we have a few kids who.
By the way,
The other one was just.
yes.
The other one was a screen print of my economic interest form.
Gene, do we have to sign anything?
Okay, I'll double check.
I'll double check.
Okay, but you know what, it's okay because I believe.
I just wanted to let you know.
And I actually checked,
Gene was talking.
checked the list today to see who was in and who was not in. Mr. Muppet, would you mind shutting the camera off?
I'm hoping for that. That's the.
What do I do?
Hit the off button.
You're just, thank you, Tom.
Do you want to leave it?
Power?